filtering a little bit further eastwards as well, perhaps into western parts of Scotland at times too. Further east, staying drier, some clear skies here, could be a bit chilly, and with that, like I said at the start, there could be some fog patches developing. Further west, a milder start to the day tomorrow because of the cloud, because of the rain and those blustery winds. We're talking gales in some exposed spots towards the west. So we start tomorrow on a bit of a damp note across many central, southern, western parts of England and Wales. That rain gradually making its way eastwards. Some glimmers of sunshine breaking through, however, from the west. Also pretty wet still across much of Northern Ireland, particularly towards the north. Some high rainfall totals likely to build up. Whilst northeastern parts of Scotland starting the day quite bright with just a few coastal showers around. Elsewhere it's going to be cloudy and increasingly wet as that rain continues to make its way north and eastwards across many places. It's going to make quite slow progress, so it will take a fair while to clear away from some eastern, northeastern parts until well after dark tomorrow. But further west, something drier, brighter following in behind. Yes, some showers around, but a bit more sunshine on offer. Worth noting though, temperatures down a couple of degrees compared to today. Then after a cold, perhaps frosty, maybe foggy start for some of us on Friday morning, there'll be a bit of showery rain coming in before more unsettled weather arrives from the west as we go through the afternoon. So further heavy rain and some strengthening winds as well. And that takes us into what's set to be quite an unsettled weekend. Not a total washout. There will be some dry weather around, but also some pretty unsettled weather too. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation, because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. A broken down vehicle is causing significant restrictions on the A90 southbound at Forfar Road in Dundee. Expect heavy congestion on the M4 westbound at junction 32 Corriton. Lane closures are active on the A1M southbound in Gateshead due to an earlier collision, and the M56 westbound in Cheshire East is shut after a major incident. The A38 northbound in Staffordshire will have delays, and the M69 southbound in Leicestershire has partial closures from another collision. And on the trains, major disruptions are impacting Grand Central and Great Northern services between Peterborough and London. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the big one. Your chance to win a whopping £85,000 in tax-free cash. The largest cash prize we've given away to date. That's like over £7,000 a month extra in your bank account each month for 12 whole months. That's a year of yes. Yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to shopping trips, yes to home improvements. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand. Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Good evening. Our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, repeatedly tells the House of Commons and interviews when she does them that the government is cutting debt and cutting borrowing. She's accused of misleading the House. I think I might personally be using a rather stronger word about it. And Keir Starmer making it ever clearer that he absolutely hates Brexit and wants to effectively overturn it. But can he do that in practical terms? And we always talk about pubs on this programme, on this channel, and pubs closing. Tonight, we talk about breweries, particularly small, local breweries, which now are closing at a rate of knots. What's to be done? But before that and much else, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you. The top stories: a fiery first Prime Minister's question since the budget today, with Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashing over claims the government has lurched into total shambles. The exchanges opened with the Conservative leader questioning who inside Labour's cabinet is briefing against the government, and claimed his CEO with Rachel Reeves' record would have been fired.
We now know that the head of the OBR was forced out for telling the truth, that the Chancellor did not need to raise taxes on working people. We also know that the Chancellor was briefing the media, twisting the facts, also she could break her promises and raise taxes.
Sir Keir Starmer hit back, defending Rachel Reeves. He told MPs his government is fixing the mess the Conservatives left.
She's completely losing the plot. She says take responsibility. Under this Chancellor, Mr Speaker, growth is up this year, defeating and beating the forecast. Wages are up, more since the general election than in 10 years of the Tories. We've had, I think, 5 interest rate cuts. NHS waiting lists are down. We've had record investment into this country. We're turning the page on their austerity and reckless experiment on borrowing. I'd compare that record to them every day of the week.
Labour MP Marcus Campbell-Savers has had the Labour whip suspended after voting against the government last night. The Penrith and Solway MP rebelled and voted against the government's plans to impose inheritance tax on farmers, telling the Commons he had to do all he could for his community. He warned in the Commons the changes would leave many farmers devastated at the impact on their family farms. Mr Campbell-Savers was informed he'd had the whip removed by Chief Whip Jonathan Reynolds today, according to a Labour source. The Health Secretary says he's had it with the British Medical Association, accusing the Doctors' Union of juvenile delinquency as resident doctors plan a five-day walkout just before Christmas. West Streeting says the strike starting on the 17th of December is irresponsible and high risk, warning the NHS is already under New Year's Eve level pressure. The BMA says it's still open to calling off the strike, but the government says it cannot go further on pay. West Streeting says industrial action now poses a different order of magnitude of danger for patients. And about 24,000 households across Kent and East Sussex are without water for a 5th day. South East Water had restored supplies to many homes, but a water quality issue at a treatment work saw the taps run dry once again. South East Water says it's working with local councils and other organisations to find the best solutions for those who still don't have supplies. Those are the latest headlines for now. It's over to Farage.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Good evening. We had 14 years of the Conservatives telling us they were cutting the deficit. Well, they did cut the deficit in some years, but the debt kept going up. But now we have a government that must just think we are stupid. Here was Rachel Reeves talking about debt and borrowing in the budget last week.
I said I would cut debt and borrowing, and I meant it. My fiscal rules will get borrowing down while supporting investment. Madam Deputy Speaker, I said we would cut the debt, and we are. Today's budget builds on the choices that we have made since July last year. To cut NHS waiting lists, to cut the cost of living, and to cut debt and borrowing.
It is not true. It is simply not true. Even in terms of borrowing, their first-year borrowing figures were 21 billion higher than she told us at her first budget. We are borrowing more than predicted, and our debt is steadily going up. Have a look at this graph of debt, and you can see just over the course of the last year, debt goes up. There's a prediction that by 28, 29, it starts to slow, but there we are. Debt is going up. Rachel Reeves says the opposite. Well, a study that was published this morning, produced by John Redwood and Lee Evans, and let's have a look at these numbers, because they are suggesting that under new borrowing, but interestingly, the bonds that are rolling over and need renewing, and I know this is getting technical, folks, but please stay with us, and they are saying that it's a 1.3 trillion lie. Well, maybe they're overegging the pudding. I don't know. I'm joined in the studio by former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng and by Baroness Diane Hayter of the Labour Party. But first, let's go to the co-author of that report, Lee Evans. And Lee joins me down the line. Now, Lee, you know, I've already established that what she's saying is not true, just not true at any level. But just explain to me. So, number one, you've taken the projected borrowing figures over the course of the next few years, and then you talk about debt rollover. Can you explain debt rollover in really good, simple English, please?
You borrow money, and generally speaking, there's a date when you have to repay it. And that's true for all of us. We might have an overdraft, for example, and there is an expected date when you're able to pay that off. Well, the problem is that we've been through the detail of the figures in the Treasury's Red Book. So it doesn't come much more official than that. Her budget was based on this and based on the OBR's forecasts as well. And we've tallied that up. And unfortunately, Nigel, it comes to rather more than the projected current borrowing for the next 5 years. So what she's having to do is to borrow to repay those debts that come up for repayment, for renewal, during the next 5 years. And if you add the two together, that's how you get to your 1.3 billion, because it's projected that she's going to be borrowing 628 odd billion pounds over the next 5 years. Well, unfortunately, she's also got to find the borrowing to repay loans that come due, which come to 676 billion. If you add those two together, you get 1.3 trillion pounds.
Okay. Lee, let me ask you a question. And by the way, I'm not saying you're wrong, but how is it that you and Redwood have come up with this and nobody else has?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's because, frankly, the lead-up to this budget, Nigel, was so chaotic, and the figures are so dramatic, the amount of borrowing that she's planning to do, which, by the way, it looks to us as if she's probably going to exceed that. They're so dramatic that everybody focused on that, and they focused on the fact that our national debt would rise to 3.5 trillion. Which is true if you look at the figures. But when it comes to borrowing in the marketplace, so you go out and you're looking for a loan from banks or whoever, and you've got to find people that are prepared to lend to you,
yes,
and lend to you at a reasonable rate. And this is one of the worrying factors in all of this, that when you look at the total amount of borrowing that she's got to do over the next 5 years, it comes to this extraordinary figure of 1.3 trillion.
Amazing.
And you have to ask yourself the question, how are the markets going to react? Are they going to start to push up our interest rates?
Absolutely. Lee, thank you for joining us and giving us that explanation. Well, I'm going to ask you at home, is Rachel Reeves lying to us? Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. GBNews.com. Got to start with you, Kwasi, on this. Redwood and Evans have a history of putting their finger on things that nobody else does. What do you make of that?
So, look, I think that a lot of that is true. The government will say, well, you know, it's based on certain assumptions and all of that. But the fundamental question is, when she says she's cutting the debt, everybody knows that as long as you're borrowing, you're actually increasing the levels of the debt. Now, what she's saying, and bear with me here, is that she's trying to say that the debt's being reduced as a proportion of GDP.
But it's not.
But it's not. That's where...
And the Prime Minister was doing it again today at the dispatch box. And it's just not true,
is it? It's not true. So very simply, the national debt is everything we borrowed for 300 years. Yep. And so if you're borrowing year on year, which is what we've been doing, which was what they're doing, you're increasing the stock of the debt. And if you can't grow it...
By the way, it happened under 14 years ago.
Oh, it did. I mean, you look at COVID. I remember when I got into office, we were spending £1 trillion. It's only 3 years ago. Yeah. And now it's suddenly 1.3 trillion. Yeah. That's the amount we're spending. I mean, coincidentally, that's so they're borrowing something to the tune of 100 billion a year, roughly, or more.
Well, hang on, it's a lot more than
that. It's a lot more. The 100 billion is the...
138, I think, this year.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's just adding to the debt. And if you don't grow fast enough, the debt is going to be just a bigger proportion of the national wealth.
Yeah. Diane, I made the point that the Conservatives try to confuse us between debt and deficit, and they sort of got away with it. I don't know how. There were one or two of us screaming on the sidelines, but we weren't getting very far. But what the Chancellor is doing here is just plain dishonest.
No.
Does she think we're stupid?
No. No, she doesn't think we're stupid, and she's not being dishonest. We're only looking at one side of it. We're looking at what if, and, you know, as the commentator has just said, you know, he's trying to project 5 years ahead.
Yes.
Well, good luck to anyone who does that. So, you know, a lot of this is if, and then, as you've just said, and if the economy doesn't grow. So there are a lot of ifs in that.
That's right, and that's what the government would say.
But it happens to be true. And, you know, the debt that's built up, you know, it was under the last government, a lot of it not its fault. Sure. It didn't start a war in Ukraine. It didn't create COVID.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that built up that was not actually, you know, your government's fault, but nevertheless,
Has Rachel Reeves cut debt since she became Chancellor?
She is planning to. Now,
Come on, Dan. Let's just get to the heart of this. She is telling us, she's telling us again and again, the Prime Minister's telling us, we are cutting debt, we are cutting borrowing. And the point I'm making is it's not true.
Well, it is true, but because...
How's it true?
Because what she's doing is, and as she always said, there will be borrowing, particularly for investment. You know, one of the great...
That is
irrelevant, because what you've just been talking about is paying it back. That's where you started. Well, can we pay it back? Now, one of the things we have to do is to, you know, the productivity review or report, I forgot what they called it, the OBR just did, was how unproductive we've come. We have got to be doing something.
They're all causal factors. I totally agree with you. Our productivity... But I want to just ask this one more time, if I can. Has Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, since they've been in government, have they cut debt?
They haven't. They haven't.
The debt as a proportion of GDP, I thought was.
No, it's going up.
It's up.
So look, it's Nigel.
Look, we all know there are economic problems. I'm not denying that.
But so boiling it down very simply, when she says she's cutting debt, that is false.
Yes.
Because they're borrowing money. OK? If you're borrowing, you're not reducing your debt. No, forget about all that stuff. If you're borrowing money, you're increasing the stock of debt. Now, the challenge she has is to reduce it as a proportion of the national wealth, as a proportion of GDP. Now, if we don't get growth, the debt to GDP will go up.
Of course.
And you say, of course, but she's not said that. She said the opposite. She said she's reducing debt, which is false.
We are working to get that growth that will bring it down.
Then why doesn't she say that? But she said she's cut it. No, she said she's cut debt. That's English. That's plain English. You're cutting debt.
The money we are paying back now is stuff mostly we inherited.
I know all of that, but look, you're trying to dress things up. What you should do is just be very frank to viewers and say, if you increase borrowing, you're increasing debt. Yeah. Now, you can say, I'm trying to reduce it, I'm trying to grow the economy.
But, Kwasi, how is it? And, OK, you know, what Evans and Redwood have come up with is more technical about debt rollover.
Yeah, but there are lots of ifs. I agree with what...
And there are lots of ifs.
There are lots of assumptions there.
But fine. But just... But you know what I can't understand? I listened to the Chancellor last week. I listened to the Prime Minister today. I knew what they were saying was wholly untrue.
It's not untrue.
And yet, Diane, it is wholly untrue. And what do you know what surprises me? The lack of media commentary around it.
Well, and also the lack of candor. We know that she's been less than candid over the last few months.
You know, the OBR, we all talk about the OBR and she's misleading. And the OBR says that the Chancellor did not mislead.
No, I close it down. What use of the OBR?
Well, that's a different matter, but the number of times that people are using that when they want to accuse her
and I want to
misleading.
rehearse last week's debate, but they said that they'd given her a figure on the 31st of October, and in fact it was a surplus. She did a press conference on the 4th of November, which last time I checked is after the 31st of October, in which she implied that she was going to have a 30 billion deficit and she needed to raise taxes to fill the black hole. That was all bogus. It was all nonsense. And they didn't need to point to the FT. What the fact is that she said she used the OBR figures to justify a tax rise. If she'd said, look, I'm a socialist and I think I should tax rich people to pay for the more vulnerable, that would have been fair. That would have been candid. But she didn't do that. She raised the taxes on the back of what they said, and that was wrong.
That row will go on. But I thought it was very interesting that, and opinion polls vary hugely, and we all get that. But I mean, the most recent one showing only 10% of the country have any confidence in her as Chancellor. She can't last, can she?
Well, wait a minute. There's two different things there. Yes, she will last.
Do you really think so?
Yes, I do. I genuinely do.
Well, from my experience... Yeah, I'll let you... No, sorry.
What's very interesting, and you must be meeting business people like I am day by day, actually, they're pretty content. We are not hearing the whinges from them. They feel they do have confidence, they know what's happening. So that will be really...
What businesses
who are you talking to?
Oh, various people.
I speak to people who they literally have got staff who are leaving to Dubai.
Yeah, and
they've had to set up offices in Dubai who are perfectly happy.
Yeah, they feel...
Well, I tell you what.
Well, come round and meet the same ones that...
I bet you're meeting big businesses.
Yes.
And there are 8,000 big businesses in Britain. I'm a bit more worried about the 5.6 million small ones. Anyway, we will draw stumps on that and move on to my favourite subject, Brexit. It would appear most of the political class in Westminster now want to undo it, including the Prime Minister.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
By the way, I don't use the word lying very often, but in this case it seems absolutely blatant to me. Hence I asked you, is Rachel Reeves lying to the public? Alex says, it feels like they're all dishonest, Nigel. I can't help but think the whole thing is a Ponzi scheme. If we can keep borrowing and the Bank of England funds it, when does the whole thing come crashing down? Well, that, of course, folks, depends on the markets. Although, if you listen to Andy Burnham, and some in the Labour Party, they say the markets don't matter. Jamie says, does it even matter how much debt there is? If Japan survives with a debt-to-GDP ratio of about 200%, why can't we do the same? Well, that is a very fair point, but I would remind you that Japan went through 2.5 decades of almost zero growth.
Zero growth.
Yeah, zero growth for 2.5 decades. So in the end...
And also, they don't have a big increase of population. So that means that their GDP per head doesn't actually go down very much. Whereas
they've really had a tough time for many, many years. Now, Brexit, I would estimate that in this current Parliament, 85% of MPs were Remainers and are, to a large extent, probably in their hearts, really rejoiners. And the Prime Minister is one of them. Here he was talking on Monday.
So we must all now confront the reality that the Brexit deal we have significantly hurt our economy. And so for economic renewal, we have to keep reducing frictions. We have to keep moving towards a closer relationship with the EU.
So I think the argument is, for economic renewal, what we have to do is to tie ourselves to a group of economies that are doing even worse than we are in the main, and accept regulation from Brussels over which we have no say at all. But then Keir Starmer is a globalist. Keir Starmer is a Euro fanatic. But I wonder, why now? Diane, why now?
Why now? Because we need to keep... Europe is our biggest and closest export. We need to be able to export easily, and that's what all business is telling us. So getting rid of the friction, I think everyone agrees, needs to be done, and it needs to be done fast.
But that would be only a tiny part of the UK economy, though, wouldn't it?
No, it's quite big actually, because we both import a lot of food and we export a lot of things.
Yes,
we need that, and that is the day-to-day rhythm of what we.
But 80% of the UK economy doesn't buy and sell products.
Well, the other bit is what we call the invisibles, and that's also quite important with Europe because of how much we do, whether it's in legal or in business expertise and that. So anything we can do about making sure our professionals can move more to be able to work either in Brussels or anywhere around the EU, making that easier is good for everybody.
But there's a great big world.
And there's no great problem about it. You see, what I don't understand is why should it be a problem if, for example, our lawyers can more easily work across the EU? That's no big cost. Even people like you who, really, really wanted Brexit, you weren't really worried about people like our lawyers or
do you know what I think,
working
Diane?
over there.
I think Europe is a tiny global market, declining with every year that goes by, in terrible economic trouble. And the world of opportunity is not in Europe, it's elsewhere. And it's really interesting to me because...
But they're not alternatives. Because we're, for example, allowing more of our, whether it's solicitors or business people or anyone else to work in Europe, that doesn't make it any harder that we should trade with America. The two don't go apart.
Well, that's OK,
and when you talk about regulation, if we want to trade with America, we also have to go along with their regulations.
I agree with that. But if we join the customs union... because
we're not going to join the customs.
But it was interesting that the Lib Dems were pushing hard for it.
They always will.
But Starmer has boasted about the fact we're free to do a deal with India, we're free to do a deal with America,
and he boasted.
And if we get closer back to the EU, we can't do that.
But Nigel, you'll remember that. But you'll remember.
They are not alternatives.
So you will remember, over the summer, we had Trump announcing his tariffs. Specifically with the UK, it was a 10% tariff. The EU got a 15% tariff. Now, if we were to rejoin the EU, we would immediately be facing it. You shake your head, but that's the truth. Well, let's see. I see this purely politically. I think that the Labour have worked out, probably about in the summer this year, that the only way they can get back in is by hoovering as many left-wing votes as possible.
We're not going to get back in. We're not going to apply.
That's the only way, and I see the budget in that context. So they have to go left. They have to try and coalesce.
Why is it, Kwasi?
But this is based on, if I may say so, a nonsense.
It's not a nonsense. I'm just interpreting what they've done.
You're not.
And I'm putting a construction on it. I'm not jumping to any conclusion.
There is no way that Labour is wanting, planning, thinking about rejoining. We are talking about a reset that improves
away our fishing rights for 12
over
years.
Things like defence and our investment in defence, our joint procurement. It means having a very good relationship with the EU, and that is what he's trying to do.
Kwasi's point's political, and I want to ask you a question, Dan.
Yeah.
The left of British politics, if we go back a few years, were the most vehemently opposed to the European community.
Going back about 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, and there are still elements of that within the trade union movement. What is the left's love affair with Europe? What is it?
Well, I mean, I think you're wrong to think that it's a love affair. It's a belief that our trade is beneficial.
Matters more than democracy.
No, they're not alternatives. That's what I don't understand. I mean, it's not just me, by the way. I gathered the Telegraph today is coming out with a big thing about how Brexit has cut GDP, it's cut productivity, it's cost investment.
That's one commentator.
But when the Telegraph starts saying this is quite interesting.
To be fair, Jeremy Warner was against Brexit to begin with, to be fair. Okay. But look, he makes that argument, and I get that. But
the important thing behind your question is that we need to improve our trade relationships with whoever. Mostly, I mean, we're doing a lot now with CPTPP. With the Asian countries, we're doing a lot over defence.
Sure. But you all know those deals
with Australia.
You can't do both. Those deals. Well, it's difficult to do both because
the closer you get to the EU, the harder it is.
Yes. You agree with that? We know when I was chairing the international agreements when we were going through all that, and we kept asking our European colleagues, we kept asking the CPTPP. Sorry, that was the Asian.
I know,
but not all your viewers follow this stuff that some of us get into. Both sides were saying there is nothing in conflict. We can do trade with both. It may have to be negotiated, but we can do trade with both, as we do over cars.
That depends.
We're doing car deals with Japan. We're doing car deals with America.
So look, isn't the real reason, Kwasi? Isn't the real reason that it's become easier for Starmer and for Ed Davey to make the arguments they're making that actually what the Tory government failed to do was to deliver enough perceivable benefits. I know good things have happened.
I agree with that. We didn't make the case. But you'll remember the Conservative Party was divided on this issue. I mean, I was through... People forget the 2017-19 Parliament when Theresa May was Prime Minister. We had endless votes in the House of Commons before you were elected. And we couldn't get anything through. And a lot of that was because Conservative MPs who were taking the whip were voting against the government's policy. So that's why Boris came in. If it hadn't been for that logjam, I don't think he would have been Prime Minister. And as a consequence of that, we got a majority. Now, when we got the majority, I'm afraid we were just totally knocked sideways by COVID. I mean, that essentially, for me, took up 80% of the government's time, 90% of the government's time, and we simply couldn't deliver on the post-Brexit.
And that's the case for the defence. Now, final quick thought on this. Danny Finkelstein, Lord Finkelstein, writes in the Times today that the Labour Party will go into the next election promising to rejoin the European Union. Is he right?
No, and he and I have disagreed on other things before, and he's admitted...
They have to coalesce the left, and if that does it, they'll do it.
Not only that, but can I just say, I've been talking with our European colleagues. Apart from anything else, I don't think they'd have a spat.
No, they won't.
Which is quite important to remember.
They won't have a spat.
Well, I'll drink to that. Okay. Now, in a moment, let's talk about the energy disaster that is gripping our country, and it is. For all the talk we get, and the government are part of it, data centres, 21st century technology, we can't do it with our current energy policy. We need to face some really quite alarming facts about how much electricity we're going to need.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast. The weather's looking quite mixed across the Mediterranean through tomorrow and much of this week. There's further heavy rain towards the east affecting Greece, Albania and other nearby nations. Could see some severe thunder, landslides, other impacts as a result because it has been so wet recently. Other areas will also see some rain at times. There will also be some drier, sunnier bursts, but it's often going to be relatively unsettled and there is a bit more rain for many to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Some eastern parts may have a little bit of fog developing again tonight, but further west we're going to see increasing amounts of clouds, strengthening winds and some rain because there's a frontal system that's marching its way in. It's quickly going to spread across much of Northern Ireland, some heavy persistent rain developing here as we go overnight. Rain also feeding in across much of Wales, southwest England and filtering a little bit further eastwards as well, perhaps into western parts of Scotland at times too. Further east, staying drier, some clear skies here, could be a bit chilly and with that, like I said at the start, there could be some fog patches developing. Further west, a milder start to the day tomorrow because of the cloud, because of the rain and those blustery winds. We're talking gales in some exposed spots towards the west. So we start tomorrow on a bit of a damp note across many central, southern, western parts of England and Wales. That rain gradually making its way eastwards. Some glimmers of sunshine breaking through, however, from the west. Also pretty wet still across much of Northern Ireland, particularly towards the north. Some high rainfall totals likely to build up. Whilst northeastern parts of Scotland starting the day quite bright with just a few coastal showers around. Elsewhere it's going to be cloudy and increasingly wet as that rain continues to make its way north and eastwards across many places. It's going to make quite slow progress, so it will take a fair while to clear away from some eastern, northeastern parts until well after dark tomorrow. But further west, something drier, brighter following in behind. Yes, some showers around, but a bit more sunshine on offer. Worth noting though, temperatures down a couple of degrees compared to today. Then after a cold, perhaps frosty, maybe foggy start for some of us on Friday morning, there'll be a bit of showery rain coming in before more unsettled weather arrives from the west as we go through the afternoon. So further heavy rain and some strengthening winds as well. And that takes us into what's set to be quite an unsettled weekend. Not a total washout. There will be some dry weather around, but also some pretty unsettled weather too. Bye-bye.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The 21st century technologies, and I'm thinking data centres, I'm thinking crypto mining, I'm thinking AI, of course. These industries use far more power than any of the old, heavy manufacturing industries that you can think of. Now, there's been so much talk about up to 50 new data centres opening around the country, but a report today, and what I think is a common sense report today by Oxford Economics, says this is literally impossible, and here's why. If we were to build up to 50 data centres over the course of the next handful of years, we would need, wait for it, a 5-fold increase in the amount of electricity that we're producing. And what Oxford Economics are arguing is, in the short term, the only way to do that is to build lots and lots of gas-fired stations, because whilst as many who watch this show regularly will know, I'm a fan of nuclear, it possibly takes just a little bit too long to be in place by 2030. Malcolm Grimston, friend of the programme, nuclear expert, power market analyst, joins me. just talk about these amounts of electricity we're going to need. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Indeed. I mean, we're pretty much already keyed in for about a 10% increase as things are going by 2030. That's about 1.5 times the output of Hinkley C, which is the biggest construction project in Europe. It's literally mind-boggling, as you say, to get your mind around these amounts of power.
How are the Americans doing it?
So the Americans are, at present, they have, of course, fracking, and they produce large amounts of their own gas, being one of the great revolutions in world energy. But they are beginning to look again at nuclear. They've opened the Vogtle station recently. They're looking very seriously at small modular reactors, as we are, and indeed big reactors, which work just as well for this sort of thing if you can get around the economics. But I think in the States, the same sort of debate is going on as to how they're going to power this revolution.
And on the SMRs, you know, this government is now talking positively about investing money in small modular reactors. And of course, these are a fraction of the size of the monstrous old nuclear power stations. But where have we got to? Are there any in the world actually fully developed and working?
The Chinese have, I think, are now operating the first one in the world. They were into this very early. But there's a load of countries which aren't all that far behind. We're seeing big projects in France, in Canada, a number of European countries, and here. We've actually been making small modular reactors since the 50s to power our nuclear submarines.
Yeah,
there's no magic issue here. And the technology now, there's a variety of approaches being tested now, which are very exciting. But we've known for a long time that you can make these stations with tens to low hundreds of megawatts output.
But if we're going to get enough energy by 2030 to get into these 21st century technologies, are Oxford economics right to say we're going to need lots of gas-fired power stations?
Well, it's very difficult to see how you can power up very rapidly. The ideal will be, then the modular bit is just as interesting as the small bit. Instead of having big construction projects for each one, which is inevitably customised every time you do it, you move towards a car industry or an aircraft industry where you batch produce them in a factory, and then you take them out to where you need them and you just construct them. Now, at that point, you can start them producing them very, very quickly and installing them very quickly. But, of course, that's a massive supply chain needed for that.
Planning and goodness knows what else. Diane Miliband, I mean, I'm afraid this government stands up and talks about data and talks about 21st century, but the current energy policy we've got means it can't happen.
Well, I think it has to happen, and it will happen. I mean, none of us can stand back and pretend this isn't going to need solving, so I'm confident that we'll do it. But, I mean, I think the interesting thing is just that none of us on the whole realise that our nice little computers and that are actually taking more energy than all the stuff we used to run our central heating and our air conditioning on, that we were very worried about.
That's right.
And so, you know, we've done a lot, and this is all governments, we've done a lot on trying to make our houses much more energy efficient. We've tried to, you know, move away from cars and into trains and all that stuff. And then behind the scenes, if you like, almost, we've had this incredible growth of AI or computing and that, and we haven't moved as fast as we should have done to supply the energy. I think we will now do it, and I think these sort of reports and ones that have been coming up, this isn't in that sense that new, have now triggered that we all have to do this.
But going to the nuts and bolts of the issue, Malcolm will appreciate this. It's a Treasury issue. I mean, I did both Miliband's job and, as you know, Treasury briefly, but I know that actually you need money to invest in the SMRs. And every time we discuss this, certainly when I was Energy Secretary, we thought, this would be a great idea, but there was an obstacle in terms of the cost. And the Treasury will argue, well, this isn't proven, so why should we commit, billions to it? And I'm afraid that is the big obstacle that we have. I think you're right. I think the Baroness is right, because I think ultimately we will have to, be serious and change policy. But until there's, as long as there's a block in terms of the expenditure, and we know what fiscal problems we're in, it'll be very difficult to get any movement.
And the other point, Malcolm, sort of finish on this point, is, Hinkley is taking forever and running massively over budget. Sizewell, despite having had nuclear power there since the 1960s, had an environmental impact assessment report of 80,000 pages and is running over budget. How is it that the South Koreans do nuclear energy at 25% of the price that we do it in about a third of the time.
Yeah, we're regulating ourselves out of existence. And this has been a problem not just for the nuclear industry, to be fair, but particularly for the nuclear industry, because they're a huge chunk of investment, which then gives you very nice, economic, reliable, all the things you want from power for possibly 60, maybe 80 years for a new nuclear station.
But they also have, I mean, the regulation is key. I mean, I remember talking about Hinkley. They had to spend about 100 million to make sure that the fish were protected from the sonic
more than that,
sound.
700.
No, but that was just one. That was just one example.
Well, I do think the government has stepped in over that one.
And there was a lot of this sort of thing going around. You know, over-regulation. You know, we were worried about the environmental impact, which is fair. But I'm afraid that does build in cost, and it takes longer.
We're regulating ourselves. We're regulating ourselves out of business here. And my contention is, if we had the ways of doing it like South Korea, we wouldn't need any public money for this whatsoever, because we'd raise it on the private market. Now, the What the Farage moment for today, and this is very, very personal. Do you remember when Jaguar Land Rover launched their ludicrous, woke, androgynous advertising campaign? And I said on this show that I thought Jaguar would go bust if they carried out this way. Well, the managing director responded at the time, Mr. Glover, by saying that Nigel Farage is not our target audience. I would have thought I was actually the perfect Jaguar target audience in almost every way. Anyway, I predicted they'd go bust. Their profits fell by 25%. Keir Starmer's been using this in the Commons to say, I wanted them to go bust. No, I didn't. I just wanted them to get real. Well, the good news is that the designer of this ludicrous advert has been sacked. I feel fully vindicated, and Jaguar sales will now increase. Next up, another subject with which you may well associate me quite closely. We all know how much trouble pubs are in, but did we know how much trouble are hundreds and hundreds of small independent brewers around this country? Well, I'm joined in a moment by a brewer. I must declare an interest. I've been using his products for several years, but he's going to tell us about the dire state of British brewing.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Changes to the laws around pubs and what beer they could sell in the 1980s led to an explosion of breweries right across this country. Small local businesses employing people and competing to produce a very high-end product. But whilst we know about the decline of pubs, I wonder how many of you know about the problems being faced by the brewing industry. Well, I'm joined in the studio by Robert Wicks, founder and head brewer of the Western Brewery, and produces beers that I might have purchased once or twice over the years. Tell us about the industry and how much trouble it's in.
It's very difficult at the moment. We seem to be battered by continuous headwinds from difficulties in the marketplace, but a lot of it stems from years and years of year after year increases in beer duty. Even under the previous government, we had beer duty escalator, where the beer duty went up by more than the rate of inflation. And those small companies like ourselves get a discount on the beer duty that we pay. We are still paying much higher beer duty than pretty much anywhere else in Europe.
And you're paying that on turnover, not profit?
You're paying that on the amount of beer that you produce. Yeah. So it's based on the alcohol content of the beer and also how much you produce. And so there has been a break, which was instituted by the European Union. So that was back in 2002. Good Lord. And there have been various changes made to that over the years. But the reality is that the continuous increase year over year in beer duty has really squeezed the industry.
And you talked to me about breweries closing. Just give us an idea of the rate of this.
Yes, so calendar 2024, we lost 100 breweries. That's about 7% of all the breweries in existence. And so far in the year to March 2025, we've lost about another 100 breweries. Now, I think if there was a headline in the newspaper that said 7% of all high street shops have now closed in the last 12 months, there would be uproar. Yeah. But we don't hear anything about it when it comes to the brewing industry, and it really is a struggle for small businesses, particularly like ours.
Kwasi, you were talking about, as a former MP, the decline in pubs.
So the question I want to see is surely the decline in pubs has something to do with this? Because I remember in 2005, so my predecessor as MP for Spelthorne, he would always go round the pubs in election time because he felt that was where a lot of the voters were. And it's true. And I remember looking at his rota, and I think there were about something like 56 pubs in the constituency. By the time I was elected in 2010, that had gone down. And by the time I left, I would have halved. I think there were probably about 25 to 30 left. And that was and a lot of that was driven by the smoking ban. So I was just wondering to what extent the decline in pubs, in terms of the numbers, has affected your industry.
Oh, it's had a huge impact on us. I mean, in 2012, there were 54,000 pubs. As of 2023, there are only 45,000 pubs. So we've roughly lost about 1,000 pubs a year. And 1,000 pubs at the moment are currently closed, empty, having closed. And in the first 3 months of 2025 alone, we've lost another 303 pubs. So, in fact, the rate of pub closures is actually accelerating.
And all the predictions are, with business rates set to go through the roof, that this could pose even more problems. But one thing you have developed, and I know you were doing this very early with the Western Brewery, is off sales, because before buying real ale was very, very difficult, but modern tech gives us this.
Yeah, so we're able to supply our real ale in mini casks, and that's been a big part of our business, direct to customers. But probably the biggest change that we made was in 2017. We moved into a new building, so we invested a huge amount of money in a new building, and we then, during the pandemic, moved some of our fermentation capacity and opened a tap room in there. And now about 30 to 35% of our volume is sold direct through the tap room to customers. A busy Saturday, we might have over 500 people coming through the brewery. Without that, it's probably questionable as to whether we would have survived, because we just do not have access to the pubs that the global brewers have now foreclosed to us. So they keep buying up all of the pubs. They then put their own beers in there and they close us out. And none of these global breweries are based in the United Kingdom. None of them are probably paying much tax in the United Kingdom. And we are being competed out of it.
This is a familiar story, Diane, isn't it? Of the big global businesses coming in and the little guys
But more important, the little guys produce better beer. You know, I'm sorry, but I'm sure some of the global breweries produce nice ones, but actually the losses of
there's
local
more
beer.
variety, there's more interest,
and
there's
its
more,
taste.
you know,
But, I mean, I think the interesting thing is about, and I have to, you know, declare my interest. I used to run alcohol concerns, so I was very happy that things were done to stop the heavy drinkers. And I'm not talking about all drinkers. I'm a happy drinker myself. But I think it's the loss of pubs. I take that very. I mean, I come from much more a community where we had clubs rather than pubs, you know, South Wales and the working men's clubs, which were a really big social centre. They were a lot of drinking, but actually they were so much more than that.
The
loss of that bit of the pubs.
I tell you, whilst we're discussing this, I'd like you to keep pouring.
Yes, keep pouring.
Very constructive use of time whilst I was
you know,
talking.
in one way, I'm really sorry that you're doing the off-licence sales, but I don't really mean that. But in other words, I would like to see something that really helps the pubs, which is part of a community. This is an important centre.
Tax. I mean, one of the points that Robert made most strongly was that, you know, the beer escalator.
I think this is the end of my image.
We do a regular.
It's not woken up. It's not woken up.
We do a regular slot on this programme.
How to kill someone's opportunity.
So this is
I mean,
a mega one.
You know, I do think that loss of community and a centre and all of that.
But are we overtaxing?
Well, I personally would like to see. I'm afraid, and you won't like this bit of it, but I'd like to see off-licence tax higher than on
Well, absolutely.
Beer.
Now, we have had a reduction in beer duty for draft beer, but that is, again, draft beer sold only to pubs, not maybe draft beer sold for home consumption.
Right.
That has helped, but it's really a very, very small reduction. We were looking for a much larger reduction in the draft beer than has actually come about.
Your point about beer duty is on the nail. I mean, people can see that in their own lives. I mean, 30 years ago, if you look at the price of a pint compared to now, it's gone way over the
Let me put it into perspective, and most people will not understand this because it is quite technical, and I know there's been a lot of numbers on today's programme, so I apologise for that. But if you drink a pint of beer in Berlin, or the equivalent of a pint of beer in Berlin, it will not be very different in price, adjusted for the exchange rate, to a pint in Birmingham. However, the beer duty on a pint of a 5% beer in the UK is 54p. The beer duty on a pint equivalent of a Helles lager in Germany is 54p. That's more than 10 times the duty rate.
£5.
Yes.
But you're saying the price is still the same now?
The price is still the same. So what it means is that the EBITDA, or the earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, that these big brewers in Germany are making is substantially higher than it is in the UK, and that is why they're able to come to the UK, they're able to come and invest in the UK, to take over breweries in the UK, like Carlsberg, and then close them down, as they did with many of the brands that they bought through the Carlsberg Marston's. And it's a predatory approach of the businesses towards pubs in the UK.
Cut beer taxes. Beer taxes.
Well, one of the good things for some of us who don't drink and drive is the low alcohol
Hopefully
beers.
none of us drink.
Well, I'm going to say, Robert,
but it's the low alcohol beers.
And talking about the plight of the industry, we're going to say cheers on this very large, talking pints.
Very good.
First today. Absolutely marvellous. No, I really do wish the industry well, because, as I say, the explosion of hundreds of local breweries all over Britain over the course of the last 40 years was a very, very, very positive thing.
It has been very good, but it's now going in very rapid reverse.
Yeah, no, I can see that. The numbers speak for themselves. Well, coming up next is State of the Nation with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who joins me down the line for the Next Door studio. Jacob, what have you got coming up this evening?
Well, we're going to be talking about the royal family and their houses and a sense of proportion for the Public Accounts Committee. We've got billions and billions, hundreds of billions being spent on welfare, and a House of Commons committee, indeed the most distinguished select committee of the House of Commons, wants to look at the trivial amounts that are spent on royal housing. It seems completely disproportionate, very unfair on people like Princess Alexandra, who have worked for decades selflessly for the country and for the monarchy, and it just seems to be completely disproportionate. A storm brewed up because of distaste for the former Prince Andrew.
Right, Jacob. Well, I tell you what, any debate on the royal family always gets great viewing figures, especially, of course, if Americans are watching, because they're obsessed with the royal family, even more than we are. Jacob, we'll look forward to that. It's over and out from me this evening. We'll be back with you live tomorrow evening here on GB News at 7 o'clock. First, though, let's have a look at the all-important weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption.